Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, August 3rd, 2020. Yes, we have new music, so get your glow sticks out, kids. I am Dave Biddle. I'm very happy to be joined by Steve Hellwagon. There's a lot to get into. Steve, let's start with Ohio State getting a commitment from the number one ranked recruit in the state of Ohio in the 2022 class. He is Gabe Powers from Marysville, right here in the Columbus area. Gabe is also ranked as the number 2 outside linebacker in the country and the number 45 overall player in the country in the 2022 class. The Buckeyes now have 4 commits in that 2022 class, very early, but ranked number 2 in the country for kids entering their junior season this year. Steve, what a great get. Ryan Day, and this train just keeps rolling on.
Yeah, no question about it, Dave. And that was good news Saturday night. Bill Kurlick was all over it, obviously, with the announcement. And then a story about the impact and also the Twitter reaction from other prospects. And, you know, it's just kind of a psychological thing as much as anything. They got Jack Sawyer, the top player in the 2021 class in Ohio out of Pickerington North a couple of years ago. And now you add the top player in Ohio for 2022, Gabe Powers from Marysville, a linebacker prospect, 6'4", 220 pounds, right out of Central Casting. And it sounds to me like kind of a Sam Hubbard type, to where if he could put another 20 to 40 pounds on his frame, maybe even more, he moves down to play defensive end. It could be one of those big raw bone defensive ends who Ohio State has just done great things with here in recent years. Or perhaps he plays the outside linebacker position. Perhaps he plays middle linebacker. The interesting thing, obviously Ohio State's got, I think, 4 scholarship linebackers who are seniors and 3 more who are juniors. So that position group in and of itself, with Al Washington, the position coach, needs a lot of help. And I think particularly when you see 7 of the 10 or 11 guys that are on scholarship will be gone after next season, you understand the urgency there to kind of rebuild the depth, and to have Gabe Powers be that guy, a number 1 player in Ohio, a tremendous coup certainly for the Buckeyes at this early stage. And he would not sign, obviously, until December of 2021 at the earliest. So a good ways out. But as we said, a good building block for the Buckeyes to build around in that 2022 class. And everybody had offered Gabe Powers. He had his choice of places to go. And ultimately, it was Ohio State. Plays at Marysville, which people familiar with their geography, right up Route 33, about 20 miles, maybe 25, 30 miles from the Ohio State campus. And just outside the outer belt, they play in the OCC, which is one of the best leagues for football in the state of Ohio, obviously playing the likes of the Hilliard schools, the Dublin schools, those types, and certainly Marysville right there in the mix with that. So exciting to see Gabe Powers become an Ohio State Buckeye.
Yeah, welcome aboard, Gabe Powers. Not a big surprise. We kind of figured he'd be a Buckeye, but still a great get for Ohio State. All right, Steve, let's switch gears. I want to get into the Big Ten schedule. What you think might happen with the Big Ten schedule, when you think we might find out. I know there's a lot of variables at play here. Hopefully we'll hear something this week. What's the latest you've heard? What's your vibe here? What do you think the schedule will look like for Big Ten teams? You think it'll be 10-game schedule with like 2 or 3 byes? And when do you think we're going to find out, Steve?
Well, I think everyone's hopeful that we'll get it sometime this week. There was talk that perhaps as soon as last Friday they would have had it. And, to put something like this together on very short notice, I'm sure is very difficult. They were going to take, it sounded like, the 9 opponents that every school had and use that as a basis. Not necessarily the dates as scheduled, though, because Ohio State wasn't scheduled to play its Big Ten opener against Rutgers till later in the month of September, whereas some schools, I think Wisconsin was opening with Indiana on the weekend of September the 5th, so they want to spread things out evenly. There was a lot of talk about maybe playing a couple of the crossover games first, then ripping through your division, as many of those as possible, and making sure that your rivalry game gets played in September or October. That way you know that it's been played. So I saw the Pac-12 is opening late September, and USC and UCLA, traditionally one of the later games, would be the opening game, which is kind of interesting, kind of the Daytona 500 format where you play the Super Bowl as the first game of the season. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it goes. Those are some of my thoughts. Again, we're just trying to uh, protect some modicum of a regular season. I saw there was a story from Ole Miss where their athletic director says playing 10 conference games for some of us, quote unquote, who are down the line, those aren't his words, those are mine, makes it hard to build a program. I'm like, bro, how about extinction? I mean, come on, join us here in 2020. The only point to this thing is having some modicum of a regular season so you keep those big TV dollars coming in. This has nothing to do with you having a competitive program. This is about surviving the year 2020 so that and I say we all have jobs in 2021. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. I thought we'd hear something by now. You just think they're just trying to get, like you said, trying to get their ducks in a row here. Like, why do you think we're seeing these other conferences get their act together and the Big Ten's kind of lagging behind here? Because usually it seems like the Big Ten has kind of been leading the charge through some of these early decisions through this pandemic.
Yeah, they were the first ones to say they were going to be doing the 10-game season, and yet we haven't seen the schedule yet. The ACC followed suit and came up with the schedule in pretty fast order, it seems like. I don't know, other than to say it's a jigsaw puzzle, and with working with their TV partners on this, they're probably just doing the best they can. I've kind of been very opinionated about this. This is the first time in recorded history we're going to get a schedule when we know one of the teams is ranked number one in the country, and that's Ohio State. Do they put a lot of obstacles in their way, make them have to go play at Wisconsin or at Minnesota, or will it be a softer touch with that other crossover game like Northwestern or something to kind of preserve their bid for a national championship? And they can be accused of that as well if that's how it turns out. Last year we saw they stacked Penn State, Michigan, and then, of course, Ohio State had to play Wisconsin the third week in a row in the Big Ten championship and had very little left in the tank and was getting blown out at halftime and had to make a huge comeback in the second half to win that game. So, do they stack the schedule against Ohio State? Do they help Ohio State? To me, that's a curiosity.
Steve, I don't know if you saw this story with there's an interesting case with Damion Payne Jr., who's the number one player in the state of Michigan for the 2021 class. And, he's the number one defensive tackle in the country, number 14 overall player in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. So a big-time recruit as far as the rankings. Now, to my understanding, Larry Johnson and Ohio State never really pursued him very hard. So that's interesting to me. You got supposedly the best defensive tackle in the country, in a border state. You don't even really recruit him. So that's interesting. And everybody kind of figured he was going to go to Michigan. His dad's a big Michigan fan. And apparently, I don't know a lot about this, but I just read about this over the weekend. There's some beef between Jim Harbaugh and the head coach at Belleville, Michigan High School, Jermaine Crowell, and that's where Damion Payne Jr. goes, is Belleville High School. Apparently there's been some bad beef that's been building, and it perhaps reached a head here. What's interesting, though, you have Alabama, who, kind of the king of college football over the last, 10, 15 years, with Clemson right there and Ohio State not too far behind. I mean, he's good enough to play at Bama, but apparently Michigan completely stopped recruiting him. His dad was quoted in the Detroit Free Press, very disappointed about it. Now, there's always two sides to every story. We're not able to hear Michigan's side of the story because they can't talk about recruits. Now, there's a way that reporters can get off the record stuff and, kind of figure out what's going on. I don't think the writer from the Detroit Free Press really was interested in getting both sides of the story here. But I find this fascinating, man. If this is, you got a local program in Belleville about 20 minutes away from Michigan's campus and one of the best programs in the state, and the head coach there and Jim Harbaugh have a beef to the point where Michigan's not recruiting that school, if that's true, that's pretty damn interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And obviously we're during a pandemic as well. They said that basically once the pandemic hit, that all communication had been cut off. And I don't know if the coach had rubbed them the wrong way. I know that he had become very close with a couple of the assistant coaches who Harbaugh had retained from the Brady Hoke staff but within 2 or 3 years, those guys had left the program, and now maybe this guy feels slighted or disenfranchised a little bit by Jim Harbaugh, who won't come over and kiss his ring. Belleville, they say, is 18 miles from Ann Arbor. They've gone 34-3 in the last, whatever it be, 2 or 3 years. So they have won a bunch of football games and produced some talent and now have a 5-star player, and Michigan doesn't make a bid for him. Michigan's not good enough right now to take a pass on a kid 18 miles from the campus who could help win you a championship. Maybe there is more to this story that we don't know. There's always two sides, as you said, to every story. But, they're cutting their nose off to spite their face right now, if that's what is being reported is true. And it's Alabama's gain, and it's going to be the gain of other programs as well. This sounds, and I'm not saying these coaches ever had any acrimony, but, like a Ted Ginn or a Maurice Douglas, guys here in the state of Ohio who have put together great resumes, great programs, and produced a lot of talent. And Ohio State, in many cases, was in position to milk that talent. And, this guy worked for Thomas Wilcher at Cass Tech. Cass Tech has sent players to Ohio State before, as well as obviously other places. And Wilcher was a former Michigan running back, played with Jim Harbaugh. And Crowell, worked for him for a while, then branched out on his own as a head coach at Belleville. And you would think there would be natural ties there, but apparently there's not. And, to me, I think this is incumbent on Jim Harbaugh being the bigger man. You're the college head coach. You're the one who needs to smooth out these issues. And, you're not good enough right now to just poo-poo players from right there in your backyard. That's my impression of it. That's if I was a Michigan fan, I would be demanding it.
Yeah, it's again, he's good enough to play at Alabama, but not good enough to play at Michigan. It's just the whole thing is
it's
just
not like
interesting.
Michigan's knocking them dead, Dave. I mean, we know that.
No, I think they've beaten Ohio State once since 2003. So
Yeah,
I don't think I
18
know,
years.
and that was the Luke
Yeah,
Fickell year, where that 2011 season, they even
that's
had it.
correct.
They even had a chance of winning that game. Braxton Miller played his butt off as a true freshman and barely overthrew DeVere Posey. I don't blame Braxton at all. I'm just saying, if they complete that bomb, Ohio State probably wins that game, which is crazy. I mean, man, they've just absolutely dominated this rivalry. It's absolutely crazy. 8 in a row, like 15-1. Just never thought I'd see the day, and I am loving it. Let's just keep that going. All right, last thing. Trey Sermon will wear the number 8. For anybody wondering what number the Oklahoma transfer running back would wear for the Buckeyes, it is number 8. He wore the number 4 for the Sooners, so he is doubling his pleasure wearing the number 8. Steve, what do you expect from Trey Sermon this year?
I'm excited to see what he can give if he's healthy. I think obviously last year there were health issues even when he was in the lineup. And then obviously he had to shut it down late in the season, missed some of the late season games when he was really banged up. So to me, I think Ohio State fans are hopeful of seeing him at full strength because he could be a pass catcher. He could be a ball carrier. He can do so many different things for you and really kind of bridge the gap until Master Teague is able to get back in there. We have no idea where his rehab is coming. It seemed like Sermon was full go over the summer. They would send you some social media drips and drabs from him working out and different things like that. So, it was interesting. The timing of this, how it all kind of worked out. Master Teague was injured on the very first day of spring practice in early March. And within a week or two, they were out there on the aftermarket searching under every rock for somebody, to come in and help them. And Trey Sermon kind of fell in their lap. So what a ready-made situation to have two guys that caliber ready to go if they're both healthy. And to me, that's the big thing. Can he stay healthy? And can he deliver a big year for the Buckeyes? And it'll be interesting if they're both healthy. How do they split the load? That can be a positive or it can be a negative, depending on how the guys handle that situation. Does one of them go off and pout and the other one becomes a star, or do they work hand in hand and maybe even have some sets where they play together in some situations? And I'm interested. I'm excited. And for Ryan Day to have weapons of this caliber at his disposal, I think you got to be excited. You know the wide receiver group's going to be great. You know the quarterback's the best, if not the best, one of the top two in the sport right now. He and Trevor Lawrence seem to be kind of neck and neck for that right now. And I think if we have the season, which I'm still very optimistic that we will, that Ohio State's going to be right there with those guys.
I like your optimism there. It's a good way to finish the show. Great stuff from Steve Hellwagon. Really appreciate it, Steve. And thank you to our listeners out there for tuning into the show. I hope everyone has a great day. Cue up the electronic dance music. Have a great day, Bucknutters.